Hey y'all, Rayshawn here. Welcome back to In the Wild. And if you're listening for the first time, welcome to In the Wild. I'm super excited and energized this semester for so many reasons. And we have so many things to catch up on this semester because I've missed you guys this summer. But for today's episode, it's going to be really cool because today's topic has been making waves in healthcare circles, online, just in pop culture in general, right? And I feel like it's something that's gonna be really personal for me as well to talk about. So, did you guys know that the diet industry is worth over $70 billion in the US alone? That makes up more than the entire GDP for some countries. Crazy, right? And Ozempic, which is originally designed for those who have diabetes, is one of those weight loss drugs that has gained so much attention over the past couple of years and is one of the fastest growing medicines in the world. So today we have a really cool group of folks from the Medical College of Georgia. First, we have Dr. Thad Carson, who is a primary care practitioner, and we have Dr. Christian Lemmon, who is a psychiatrist. So they both work in the world of weight loss and helping those who may have a unhealthy weight, and they work with those patients a lot and do incredible things with them to make sure that they're healthy and safe. So we're going to talk to them a lot. And the reason why I thought this was so important is because we see diet culture being talked about everywhere, right? Online with social media influencers, from trendy diets that we may see walking in the store from like a magazine or something, or just, mom and dad or aunt, uncle who are trying some, diet trend or something. So today is going to be really interesting, and it's also, like I said, personal for me because for those that have been watching the show for a while, you know that I've tried to start my wellness journey way back when, and then grad school happened, and then I just kind of completely fell off. And for those who've been watching the show for even longer than that, know that I'm a diabetic. So I was actually prescribed Ozempic, so I've started taking Ozempic, and so we're going to talk to some professionals about Ozempic and their hot takes. So I'm going to learn along with y'all, so I'm really excited, and here we go. Welcome, guys, to the show. Dr. Lemmon, Dr. Carson, thank you so much for being here to chat with me a little bit. And I guess just to dive right in, do you mind just giving our listeners a little bit of an introduction and I guess talk a little about your roles at MCG?
Okay. Sure. Thad Carson. I'm an internal medicine physician and also teach at the medical school at MCG.
And my name is Christian Lemmon. I'm a psychologist and I see patients most of my time. I also teach at the medical school and train residents.
For today's topic, I want to say it's like very interesting, and we're talking about diet culture a little bit. So do you mind just from your own experiences define what diet culture is today in today's world?
That's a really good question. I've been doing this for 30 years and no one's ever asked me that question. Diet culture. Well, I mean, the immediate thing I think of is let's go to the grocery store and let's walk through the checkout line and let's see who's on a diet and who's lost weight. All over the rags, I was watching TV last night and saw a commercial for GLP-1s. So it's just, I think if I had my slides in front of me, I could tell you how much of a multi-billion-dollar industry it is. But I mean, people spend a lot of money trying to lose weight.
And I feel like the diet culture has changed even since COVID. I feel like COVID was like everyone inside, and then now that everyone's come out, I feel like the diet culture has switched. I feel like there's a lot more buzz about diets and weight loss than there even was, even pre-COVID years.
Unfortunately, people gained a lot of weight during COVID too.
Right. And also during that time, I guess because people were at home more, some people were able to focus more on their physical health because they didn't have to worry about that commute to work and like being in the office and kind of stuck.
I suspect that people went one extreme or the other.
I gotcha.
More fit or less.
Yeah, I do have a few people I know that did that got healthier during COVID,
Really?
but I would say they were the minority.
Yeah, I think
The
so,
minority?
too.
Yeah.
Most people, okay. And how would you guys say just over the past couple of decades since, I know for you, Dr. Lemmon, you've been doing this for quite some time, how would you say like the perception of dieting has changed over the past couple of decades?
Well, I think people are more open about it. I think it's unfortunately a topic of conversation far too much. I think if you are out with people, someone having lost weight is sometimes a topic of conversation. But yeah, it's just all around us. So I think, again, I was alluding earlier to just how much money is spent with respect to dieting, whether it's commercial weight loss programs or just self-imposed programs or doctor-prescribed programs. It's just the amount of money that's spent in an effort to lose weight is just absolutely incredible. And unfortunately, the data on weight loss is pretty abysmal. People lose weight pretty effectively, but keeping it off is a whole nother story. So,
Now, I guess, how do you go about interacting with patients who are coming to you guys saying, hey, I want to lose weight, but I'm not sure how, or I feel like I have a more serious problem than just not feeling motivated to be healthier and be more active, I guess. Like, how do you start with those patients?
Yeah, it always starts the same. Even with our new tools, we'll talk about the GLP-1 agonists a little later on. Even with the newer tools, it always starts with, hey, let's go back and do a food journal. Let's, download a, MyFitnessPal app or a Noon. Let's track what you're eating. Because people don't realize, I mean, I didn't. I did a 2-week on myself and didn't realize the number of calories in foods, especially foods you buy at restaurants. I remember typing in a Panera Bread little scone and being wowed at how many calories a little scone was. So starting with the food journal, talking about, what do you eat? Why do you eat that way? Talking about exercise and, eating. Those lifestyle things are very private to people. So having a safe place, with your doctor or counselor to talk about that is really the first step, because a lot of that goes back sometimes decades into the way they've coped with life.
yeah, there's a lot of reasons why people end up overweight too. One of the first things we can't ignore is someone's genes. I mean, if you have two parents that are overweight or obese, you're more likely to be overweight or obese than someone who has one parent, than somebody who has no parents who are overweight or obese. So we have to acknowledge that. But then it's, food choices, it's drink choices, it's overeating, it's excessive snacking, it's lack of structure and planning associated with going to the grocery store, buying the food, preparing the food, how you eat the food. Just the way you eat your food can have a big implications on weight issues. Then there's also like an over-reliance on fast foods, sedentary behavior, obviously, emotional eating or eating in response to your emotions and stress. So all those things have to be assessed before you can just say, all right, let's do this. Because one size does not, that's interesting, one size doesn't fit all
Right.
with respect to dieting. Amazing to me too, I totally agree with you. You said that you had an eye-opening experience when you Googled how many calories in a scone. But the thing that still amazes me is, despite all the information out there about nutrition, people don't understand how much they drink in terms of calories. Probably the worst case example I ever came across was I was consulted about a 15-year-old girl who was in our children's hospital years ago, and she was in for a cholecystectomy, which is a gallbladder removal, which is a 40-year-old woman kind of surgery, not a 15-year-old girl. But she weighed over 300 pounds, and when I walked into her hospital room, she had a 20-ounce bottle of Coke sitting on her nightstand. I didn't immediately ask her how many of those she drinks today, but in the course of our conversation, I said, and I see you have a Coke there. How many of those do you drink every day? And she said 10 to 12.
Oh, wow.
So one of those is like 240 or 250 calories. So 10 times 240, I think, is 2,400. So she's had more calories than her recommended daily intake would call for before she's ever put any food in her mouth.
That's crazy.
So people consume a lot of calories just by what they drink. So sometimes some education about it can really go a long way too.
And then also on the other side of life, the metabolism and hormonal issues play a huge role. People, as they age a little bit, their hormones are changing, and especially menopause for females changes the way they handle calories, and then metabolism slows as we age. So a lot of people say, I'm eating the same as I always have. Why am I gaining weight? And really frustrating to to have to look at that and judge changes in lifestyle.
Yeah, there's no way I could continue eating the way I did when I was a college athlete.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing how much I used to eat.
Well, you could.
I could, but I wouldn't be as healthy as I am right now.
And I always feel like on social media there's like a new, I want to say like diet trend or like trendy, something like, oh, you
Yeah.
can, do this and lose, this many pounds in like a month or whatever. What are y'all's takes on like extreme dieting and like trying to follow trends?
Yeah, is it something that's sustainable? Sure, there are lots of ways to lose a lot of weight very quickly, but is it sustainable? And that's why he and I both advocate for lifestyle changes. That's going to be sustainable.
Yeah, all those crash diets work. I mean, Whole30, you lose the weight in a month, but you're not going to keep living that way for the rest of your life. And so the long-term data on the crash diets is typically very poor. A lot of them even have evidence that you gain past your start weight by a year.
Oh,
so
wow.
You crash
Yeah.
down 30 pounds, and then by that point in a year, that you've gained more than you started at. So you've changed your metabolism by going into like starvation mode, where your body tries to hold on to calories. So as soon as you finish your 30-day crash diet, your body just is super hungry trying to make up the deficit. So really focusing on lifestyle too. The Women's Health Initiative back in the late 1990s, early 2000s showed that to keep the weight off, you've got to add diet and exercise. Like diet is how you lose. Like I have patients all the time who tell me, I go to the gym for an hour every day and I'm not losing any weight. I tell them, it's hard to lose weight with the calories you burn, at the gym. But the evidence from the Women's Health Initiative showed that the exercise is what resets your metabolism point. And so if you diet without the exercise, then as soon as you stop the diet, your body tries, you're hungry, you're trying to get back to where your body thinks your goal weight is. Whereas if you add in that exercise, then it changes your goal weight and you can keep it off. So it's got to be both. The cardiologists talk about 150 minutes of cardio exercise a week. And so that's for cardio health, but that also is enough to reset your metabolism down to wherever your new weight is.
And that's one of the concerns that we have about these GLP-1s is you get the shot and it changes the way, it changes your hunger level for one thing, but if you're not doing exercise, then you start losing lean muscle tissue too, and you're going to gain all the weight back as soon as you stop taking those medications.
Yeah, I was just gonna lead into that with so many weight loss drugs becoming popular, especially around the pandemic time, and then people being isolated and they're coming back out and it's like, oh, you look like you lost a lot of weight, or you look like you had something seriously going on with this dramatic weight loss. And for people who aren't necessarily maybe like a diabetic or like needed those drugs to begin with, like they've been taking them, and I was curious to get your thoughts on taking those type of weight loss drugs for those who, one, are necessarily they were intended for, but also those who they weren't intended for.
Yeah. Well,
You want to talk a little bit about the history of that? Like, why were they initially designed?
specifically
Yeah.
the GLP-1 agonists. Yeah. So GLP is one of the hormones the body releases while you're eating. It has insulin release, so it's part of the diabetic, helping more insulin release, but it also affects how full you get. So it's part of that feedback loop for as you're eating, your body tells you you're full, so you stop eating. So when we overload ourselves with synthetic GLP-1, then not only do you get a little more insulin release for the diabetics, but you also get that early satiety. You get full faster, which is why you get those weight loss side effects that come with it. So, I mean, they've been around for, I know they're recently in the news, only the last
Right.
couple years, but I think they've been around 2 decades
Oh, wow.
as a diabetes med.
For
diabetes.
diabetes.
And then now for about a decade since the first one started being used for that weight loss side effect. And so, I agree with you, Rayshawn, on one side where, lifestyle is the way to do it. But a lot of these patients that are taking it, they have a long way to go to get to their ideal body weight. And so having something to kickstart, a lot of patients think is, they've tried the diet, they've tried the exercise, and it's so slow. Having something to help them at least kickstart it is a good idea. But like Dr. Lemmon said, if they're not doing the lifestyle, The drug companies would love you to stay on these meds forever
Yeah.
without making those lifestyle changes. As soon as you go off the med, that hunger comes back, the early satiety goes away, and then the data shows you gain back, some 40, 60% of the weight. So some of it stays off, but at a year, 40 to 60% after you come off is gained back.
Right, so you may have consumed less food when you were taking the medication, but if you haven't changed the way that you approach food and the kind of food you eat, as well as the physical activity, then you're just going to go back to where you were.
Mm-hmm. And, talking about from a medical perspective, being, obese, way overweight has a lot of health effects. We see increases in mortality from things like strokes, heart attacks, even cancer risks go up, and then a lot of joint pain, diabetes, hypertension, all what we see, some of our most common diseases are related to weight. So, some of it's this diet, this diet culture that is emerging and I think evolving now. But some of it is, from as their physician, I'm recommending, hey, if we get the weight off, we'll be on less pills. You'll be able to see less, your chance of a stroke or heart attack goes down. Those are things I like to see as their physician. So there's kind of this other side of having that med to kickstart it. But unless you're planning on taking an injectable once a week for the rest of your life, really focusing on the lifestyle at the same time.
Why do you think those medications have become so popular, especially in the more recent years?
So, a lot of it is they've just got those FDA approvals. So, semaglutide is Ozempic, which hit the market, very popular for diabetes management, and then now it's FDA approved as Wegovy. So same med, different name because it has a different FDA approval. And, that was, I would say, 3-4 years ago that the FDA approved, and that's once that hit the market, then the marketing exploded as the drug companies now were selling it, and then tirzepatide is Mounjaro, which is a combo medicine, which is a little more effective for weight management. Now, a year and a half ago, came out as Zepbound. So, pretty, year and a half, that's pretty new. And so now they're marketing their medicine. So I think there's just more commercials.
It's far more
out there.
commercials. Plus celebrities are using it and endorsing it. People, I've read something the other day about, I don't remember who the actor or actress was, but had needed to lose like 30 or 40 pounds for this role they were playing and did it with GLP-1s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so stuff like, the common person hears about that. It's like, I want to try this. So, you experience this far more than I do because you're a physician, but I'm sure people come in asking for the medication.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so, back in the day, nobody came into their doctor and said, I'd like you to put me on such and such. But now it's, it's there. And so people come in asking for the medication by name.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that when they say, like, yeah, I just think Ozempic is going to be the right option for me?
Yep. The commercials told them to ask their physician, right? So
Yeah.
they're just doing what they were told last night watching their TV show. It starts the conversation, right? So we can easily get to a shared point pretty quickly. If that's their chief complaint is, I want Ozempic for weight loss, then we can say, all right, as your physician, I think weight loss is a great thing, depending on what their weight is. But if they're at a point, a body mass index over 30, we'll agree that's a good goal. And then I can then say, I think that may be a part of this, but there's going to be other parts too if you want it to be lasting. Go through that data we talked about, the 40 to 60% gain back. So it's not a magic cure-all, lose the weight permanent, unless you do the hard work anyway.
So when you're interviewing a patient for the first time who's requested that, like what are some of the first questions you ask them to get at why they want what their rationale is for wanting it?
Yeah. What is your motivation? Why do you say that? I remember one patient knew her daughter was getting married at a destination wedding at the beach in the Caribbean, and didn't like the way she looked in a swimsuit, and so she had 9 months and was willing. Hey, I need to do something. I want to change the way I look, and so powerful motivation. But now she's way past that wedding, and we're having that conversation about, do we stay on the med? What's our goal weight here? And so that big motivation is gone, right? And so now we have to have a harder conversation about, okay, we got the weight off, and now what are we going to do long term?
So,
So patients don't come to me for GLP-1s because I can't prescribe medication, but I do psychological evaluations for people who are being considered for bariatric surgery. And so the first thing I ask them is, tell me why you've decided to seek surgery right now. And what I want to hear is, I'm concerned about my health, and specifically this medical condition, this medical condition, this medical, and usually have 4 or 5 medical conditions. I'm also concerned about my quality of life. I'd like to be able to play with my kids. I want to see my kids graduate from high school. I want to see my grandchildren. One of the big things I hear is I want to get on amusement park rides.
yeah.
I had somebody just Monday who can't get on amusement park, was terribly upset because they'd gone on a cruise to the Caribbean and couldn't get on the zip line because of their weight status. And so those are all pretty good reasons for wanting to make these changes. What I don't want to hear is I need to lose weight because I'm uncomfortable with my body image. It's got to be more than just that for me to take someone seriously about something as big as bariatric surgery. And I imagine you have some sort of similar kinds of concerns about GLP-1s.
Right. Yeah. A little less than the bariatric surgery, but same. They all have side effects. GLP-1s, that early satiety. For the weight loss, we're going to push that to try to maximize the side effect, right? And so as we push it, a lot of patients get that, just food doesn't sound good. The smell of food makes me queasy, especially when you just change your dose. And so is it something that's worth the side effects that you're going to go through? And if it's, like you said, if it's just this body image, which usually I'm approaching it by the time they're at a body image, usually they're at an unhealthy weight. So I'm trying to leverage some encouragement to thinking about their long-term health. But the medicines have side effects.
Yeah.
I'm also curious, what is that experience like after they've, I guess, like hit their goal weight, maybe from being on Ozempic or Wegovy, or maybe they had bariatric surgery? Like, I guess, what is the treatment? I guess I don't know the right word. After the fact, like, how do you keep, or is that just encouragement, or like, what does that look like after they've?
Well, hopefully they've made some lifestyle changes along the way too. I mean, typically people don't get bariatric surgery if they're getting bariatric surgery from a reputable outfit, unless they've shown over a 3 to 6 month period minimum that they've made some actual lifestyle changes.
Okay.
So you can't just walk in. Well, I'm sure you can do it somewhere, and you can go out of the country and do it too easily. But you don't typically walk into a surgeon's office and say, I want bariatric surgery, and you get it a couple days later. There's typically, you meet with a team of professionals, so dietitians, someone like me who can evaluate them from a psychiatric perspective, and then also other support staff like NPs or PAs, as well as the surgeons. And then that team decides together, this person sort of is worthy of the surgery now because they've shown that they can make some lifestyle changes and keep them going over a certain period of time. Mm-hmm. So this person's probably a good candidate now, where when they first walked in the door, I mean, there's a reason why they're walking in your door to begin with. They probably have a lot of changes they need to make.
Yep. If you don't mess with metabolism, Dr. Lemmon and I see patients that go through big bariatric surgery, even bariatric bypass surgery, and then I had a patient who drinks, smoothies from a fast food restaurant and still maintains their calorie intake to not lose weight. They didn't. Hopefully the counseling beforehand cut some of those patients out who are just looking for a quick fix but no lifestyle changes before they go through a major surgery like that. Mm-hmm. And that's our bariatric team here at AU does a great job with Dr. Lemmon, with their dietitian, with their, they have lifestyle coaches with them, and then the surgeons are not in a hurry to get to the OR. They want to do what's best for the patients. So yeah, I would encourage people, if they're thinking about it, at least to go to that initial visit and talk to the team. It's not like you show up and they schedule an OR date.
That's not happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be a little intimidating. Well, I guess not so much if that's what they're going into, and they're asking for it, because that's, like you mentioned before, like sometimes that stuff is commercialized and it's like, yeah, talk to your doctor to do this. But thanks so much, you guys. For those watching, stay tuned because we'll be right back.
With the JAG mobile app, you can now discover and filter events that match your interests. Your tasks for success at AU will be right there in your current tasks. Finish them, and they automatically move to the completed task section. But that's not all. With the JAG mobile app, you'll receive targeted push notifications that are relevant to you. No more irrelevant alerts clogging up your phone. Stay in the know without the noise. JAG Mobile's messaging feature lets you see which events they're attending, the groups they're joining, and the conversations they're engaging in. It's the ultimate social and academic networking tool.
Right. Welcome back, guys. Before we were kind of talking about just some of the implications that come with bariatric surgery, weight loss medications, but I was also curious about the mental health impact of weight loss in that journey. So I'm curious, especially for you working with those patients specifically, like what does that look like when it comes to their self-worth?
Yeah, it can have a tremendous impact on that. I mean, what we've seen is that people are less depressed, they're less anxious after they've lost significant weight. One of the things that sometimes contributes to a lack of improvement with respect to self-worth is the body image. Sometimes folks who lose a significant amount of weight have a very difficult time seeing themselves as they actually are and see themselves sort of what they were. And it's hard for them to appreciate the amount of weight loss that they've experienced. And so I try to help my patients improve their body image along the way too. We focus so much on the aesthetics, our appearance, but also how our body functions. So you have a person who has a BMI over 40 who, you can explain better than me, likely has joint pain, likely has lower back pain, likely has shortness of breath. What are the other kinds of things that you would run across that would make doing things difficult besides those ones I've just mentioned?
Yeah, a lot of it's mobility.
Mobility, okay. And so stamina. And so I try to get my patients to look at how they're functioning now. So instead of just looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, you know, I like my eyes because they're a pretty shade of blue, which is important, I also want people to be able to say, you know, I like the fact that now I can walk down the street and not get short of breath, or I can go up a flight of stairs and not barely get to the top before I'm almost passing out. I like the fact that I can get down on the floor with my kids and play and then get back up. And I think there's too much emphasis on one's physical appearance as it looks rather than how your body functions. So I'm all about both aspects of that. And then of course also just appreciating what makes us attractive and interesting individuals outside of our physical appearance and how our bodies function. So I think it's important you don't ignore that.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Dr. Lemmon's getting at is if you're doing it because you don't like yourself, then losing weight may not be the answer for that.
No.
So addressing
It's
that
not going to be a cure-all.
Right, addressing that underlying depression that's there, and not having them hyper focused on weight as if I could just lose the weight, then I would be happy. That line of thinking is not successful.
But the thing about that, though, if you look at the symptoms of depression, lack of energy, general fatigue, the lack of interest and pleasure in usual activities, you can increase your interest and pleasure in usual activities once you're able to be more mobile. So some of those symptoms sort of go away with the weight loss to some extent. But if there's major issues that are related to self-dislike and self-criticalness and guilt feelings and feelings of failure, weight loss is probably not going to help that all by itself.
Yeah,
so that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that does make me think of sometimes, every now and then I'll see a friend who has their weight loss journey. They're like, oh, I hated myself before. And kind of like what you guys mentioned before, like, oh, I just would be so happy once, or I'm happy now that I've lost this weight. And it makes me think like, well, if you hated yourself before, how much work have you done besides losing weight to love yourself? Because it can't just be that superficial, right?
Right.
And that's why we keep emphasizing the holistic approach.
Another curious thing, because I just have this very curious mind today, was about the body positivity movement. Because a lot of times I feel like it can be easily misperceived as people thinking that they're in support of people living an unhealthy lifestyle versus, in my opinion, it's more so people trying to love themselves throughout or regardless of what size they are. And I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on how that's being perceived and your takes on it.
Yeah, I think it's good that the body positivity movement is trying to get away from just weight, shape, and size is all that matters. But I think it's dangerous to ignore the medical complications that come with obesity too. So I don't want to lose sight of that.
Yeah, I think it's counteracting some of the, you're checking out and all they have is, swimsuits and, celebrities on the checkout aisle. And people get a lot of body image issues, if that's what they're exposed to all the time. Or you look at our, our movies and our TV shows and who's in them, as a rule. So I do like the counteracting some of that. If you don't have this one particular body image, you're not going to be happy about the way you look. So I think there's some positive there, but I agree with Dr. Lemmon. As in my role, I'm looking at physical health, so not counteracting the health benefits they would see with weight loss, but addressing some of that. Weight loss should not be what you're waiting on to be happy. So yeah, pros and cons. You can take it too far, like everything.
Yeah.
You can take it too far, but I think in general, a pushback on a culture that says, this actress or this actor this is the ideal body image, like that needs to be pushed back on.
Yeah, it's amazing how few people are able to tell me what the average size, of a woman, height and weight is, or what the size of their clothes is. And even a class of, we have 200 and some odd medical students that we'll present to. And when I do my presentation on eating disorders, I'll ask the class, what's the average dress size of a woman in the United States? And I swear I'll hear a bunch of 2s and 4s thrown out there.
Oh, wow.
That's not the case. It's 10 to 12, probably closer to 12, unless of course you're considering vanity sizing, which makes it lower. But even our medical students don't know the answer to that question. The average woman is about 5'4" to 5'5" and weighs about 155 pounds. They're not 5'10" and weigh 117. So, but I mean, if you watch TV and commercials and look at billboards and look at magazines, especially fashion magazines, that's what you're led to believe. It's just not real.
And there's that social media skew, right?
Oh gosh.
You post on social media, you put your best foot forward, right? And so you're not posting, those other pictures.
One of the things I have to do with a lot of my patients, of course, I primarily work with patients that have conditions like anorexia and bulimia nervosa, but is, going through their phones or their computer tablets, whatever, and looking at what they have bookmarked and who they're following. Because it's doing them a disservice if they're sitting there comparing themselves all day long to people who are not, they're not Jane and Joe Doe. They're, it's not typical.
Right. And if you're already...
And some people are more vulnerable to that than other people too.
Yeah, and if you're already unhappy with, how you look and you're, following all these people who look perfect, or so you think they are perfect, that can affect you.
Yeah, I was at the beach a couple weeks ago. I didn't compare myself to 25-year-old guys walking up and down the beach. I would have been miserable. And I don't think about, I can't possibly run a mile like I used to in college, and I can't possibly be as strong as I was when I was in graduate school. But for 63 years old, I'm in pretty decent shape. And I have to be careful about who I compare myself to. So
I think that's going back to your first question last segment, I think that's where some of this new diet culture has come from, is since COVID, social media use has exploded. I mean, I think the Surgeon General was just trying to get, I don't know if he was successful, just trying to get a warning put on more than 4 hours a day of social media leads to increased anxiety, depression. Like he was just trying to get that approved through. And it's exploded. And I think the average amount is 5.5 hours is what the average American uses social media.
And I like what the data looks like for different age groups too. But I mean, a lot of parents are not monitoring this at all.
And that's what you're doing. I mean, that's what social media is.
Like when I was growing up, people were worried about how much TV time we spent. Now it's how much time's on your phones.
Right. And so I do think a lot of that comparison, that unhealthy, just to compare, we talked about, it's genetic, it's hormonal, it's metabolic, and then they compare themselves to, everything they see on social media or TV or billboards or, I don't know if people do magazines anymore, but magazines.
Yeah, I was going to also ask, do you think people feel or are more knowledgeable of hey, my genetics and hormones and other factors come into play? Or do you think people are still just thinking it's just, oh, it's just because, or someone is overweight or someone doesn't look the way they want just because of lack of diet and exercise.
Well, I know that when I'm evaluating someone for bariatric surgery, I say, well, let's talk about some of the reasons why you're obese right now. And I have a form that they fill out, and it goes through their mother, father, maternal grandparents, paternal grandparents, siblings, etc., and ask you to identify where they are in terms of very thin, average, healthy, overweight, and obese. And if I see a bunch of obese checked, I'll say, well, we have to consider you got some genes that have contributed to this, and I write genes down. And a lot of patients like they hadn't even thought about that. So, and then there's others that are more clued in. But then we go through all the lifestyle things too that have contributed to that. Mm-hmm. So some people are more aware of that than others.
In general, I would say less aware because it's a lot of body image issues and even shaming.
Like if you just try harder,
right?
Just put your fork down,
right?
And that's just not fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely, even personally, have experienced that of people just like, oh, weight loss is easy. You just have to eat less and just work out more. And it's like, well, there's so many other things that come into play for some people because everyone doesn't have, the same circumstances to maybe have access to a gym or have a support system at home that's like...
Or it may not be safe in your neighborhood to exercise.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing I always talk about. So if you, for those of you who are in the local area, let's turn left off of St. Sebastian on the Walton Way. Let's head up to the hill from Walton Way. So let's see what we see in terms of restaurants. So we'll have a Bojangles on the right, and McDonald's on the left. If I miss one, tell me. Firehouse on the right, Zaxby's on the left, Burger King on the right, Crystal on the right, Subway on the right.
There's a Wendy's in there too.
There's a Wendy's on the left. There's a Kentucky Fried Chicken. There's a local establishment that sells fish and stuff like that. I think the Arby's is out of business, I think. But anyway, you get my point. Now, let's look at all those places. And other than the foods they sell, what do they have in common in terms of their signage? Like, what do their signs all have in common?
For a lot of them, I'm thinking of the color red.
They're all red, yellow, and orange. Mm-hmm. So what color are fire engines?
Red.
And sometimes in big cities, they're yellow. And what color are stop signs?
Red.
And yield signs? And street lights?
Right.
And what color car gets pulled over the most on our nation's highways? Red. So you don't think the marketers have all that? I mean, it attracts your attention. Mm-hmm. And we don't think about that when we're driving down the street and go, oh, I think I'll just get one of these. So, it's amazing how much money is pumped into the marketing of these things too. And some of those foods are less expensive, and it's easier to feed a family than it is to get fruits and vegetables. And
we talk about having that conversation. One of my patients, she's a single mom. She's got 2 kids. She has 2 jobs. She grabs her kids between jobs, and the kids are in the back seat, saying, McDonald's, we want, Happy Meals for dinner. She has a couple hours to get them down before her night shift starts.
Doesn't want to fight with her kids in the limited time that she has.
Doesn't want to start a fight. It takes time to cook.
Takes time to go to the grocery store to get the food.
Time to go to the grocery store, and it's more expensive.
Mm-hmm. Right.
She's already
Especially
working
now.
2 jobs to try to support them, and it's so easy just to say, yeah, let's do it again today. Let's swing by McDonald's, drive through, dinner's done, kids are happy.
And get a sugar sweetened beverage too.
Yeah, grab some of your sugar sweetened beverages. We'll leave some names out of there. But that's where the rubber meets the road, right? So it's reality. Easy to say. Yeah, that's the real patient. So it's easy to say, oh, just put the fork down. But you got to get into someone's life and see what that looks like, because it's not that easy.
Yeah, because for me, with my whole grad school journey that I just completed in May.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Been there, done that.
But yeah, that was it for me. I don't feel like I have time to go to the grocery store and cook and, clean, put away my,
And sometimes less expensive too.
Yeah.
Right. And they do a good job keeping the cost down.
What do you guys think about, I guess, the future of weight loss and the treatment for it, whether it's medicine or surgery? What do you think that looks like?
I think these medicines are exciting. They clearly make a difference as long as they're not done in a silo by themselves.
Yeah, a lot of patients who either wouldn't consider surgery because they don't get over the thought of it, or don't have time to consider a new doctor's appointment going in, a one shot a week now. And, they have, Ozempic, semaglutide, they've now marketed an oral form. So I think
Oh,
the
wow.
future,
I didn't even know that.
yeah. So only for diabetes currently, but I'm sure
Yeah, it's only a matter of
it's
time.
only a matter of time before it's
That's less
approved.
subversive than sticking yourself in your thigh.
So I think you'll have even a larger group of patients who are like, ooh, a needle every week? That's not for me. But now you talk about a pill a day and they start saying, oh, okay, I think I could do a pill a day if I could lose the weight. And so it's exciting to have another tool in the tool belt. We talk about, weight loss for body image and the dangers of all that. But I think as far as a physician goes, the more tools we have to help people when appropriate is better.
Yeah, I think it's exciting what we're learning about how gut hormones work. But we just can't do that by itself. We have to, all these lifestyle changes have to take place. I just don't want to lose sight of that. And I think that frustrates patients
Yep.
when we say, pump the brakes, we can give you this medication or we can do this surgery, but let's look at what else you have to do to make that successful and to have it last for the rest of your life. Because people want the quick fix that you mentioned earlier. And so we sometimes get some pushback about that.
Yeah. Or a lot of, I have done all that.
Yeah. That doesn't work for me.
That doesn't work for me, yeah. Which now we have a new tool, we can add this on, but we've got to go back and start looking at that food journal. We got to look at, you're eating less, what are you eating? What does that look like?
And what would you say for those listening or watching that may be struggling with their body image and they don't really know the right place to start in terms of correcting that?
Well, not social media. I don't know if you necessarily need professional help for that. It depends on to what degree that is adversely affecting you. But I think someone who specializes in that kind of work would be very helpful. There's, I don't think we're really taught how to consider ourselves with respect to our body image. I mean, if one of the experiments I like to do with people is, and we can all just do this together right now. So let's pretend we're looking in a full-length mirror and we just got out of the shower. And so let's raise our right hand as soon as we find the part of our body that we dislike the most. Let's be honest here.
I'll raise my hand.
Okay, now keep it
Peer
up.
pressure.
Now keep it up.
Okay.
And let's put it down as soon as we find the part of our body that we like the most. So usually it takes longer to put your hand down than it does to put it up.
Really?
Think about that. I mean, I'm not going to ask you what you like and dislike and reveal that, but you probably spend much more time looking at the parts of your body that you dislike than the parts of your body that you do like. So what kind of service are you doing to yourself? So, just learning how to consider your body in a non-judgmental kind of fashion. So I think that's really important.
I'd say, for me, I think your first response, unplug, stop comparing yourself, and I come from a Christian background, so, created in the image of God. Where does your self-worth come from? If it's comparison, that's what we find with body image. When it's comparison, whether that's body image or if I just had a little more money or if I was like so-and-so, you're never happy. You're never enough, and you're always chasing that your whole whereas if you find your self-worth from who created you and who you are, I think that's where you finally get to
Much easier to
breathe that calm sigh and be happy with who you are and how you were created. And as long as you're comparing, and that's our culture, is comparison. I mean, that's, you hop on social media and that's all it is people loading up their happy, right now it's all 4th of July family events, and you're just seeing the smiley faces and the sparklers, and they don't show you the tantrums and everything that happens, and you just compare yourself.
What happened when you picked up your kids between two jobs?
Right, exactly. Or what's happened when you picked up your kids between two jobs. Yeah.
And they were screaming because they haven't seen you for 2 days.
Yeah.
So.
And then last question before I let you guys go is just as physicians, but also faculty, how do you train the new generation to be aware of how to treat patients who are struggling with their body image or unhealthy or have an unhealthy body weight.
Yeah, I think leading by example is a really good way. We actually did a study, it was probably in the mid-90s, where we took internal medicine residents and we had them participate in a study that was designed ultimately to help them to feel more comfortable talking about these issues with their patients. So we had them do the exact same stuff. And so I think whatever we can do to help new professionals learn how to be comfortable having these difficult conversations with their patients. And still, it's just so sad to hear patients tell me how doctors respond to them with respect to their weight, shape, and size. Very, very judgmental and use derogatory terms and just not very sensitive about all that. So whatever I can do to help doctors be more, I mean, the reality of it is unless you've been obese or perhaps pregnant, you don't know what it's like to be afraid to go downstairs or to step off a curb or to walk down the street and have people yell things at you because you're obese and you're trying to exercise so that you can do something about that. And so I think just, helping people to sort of walk in the shoes to be more sensitive to how difficult that can be.
Yeah, empathize. Yeah, Dr.
empathy's
Lemmon
big.
does a great job for a long time now, trying to give a little intro to med students when they come. And this is a closely guarded, very personal space, and it takes time. So yeah, you have to be trained in, how do you step into that and make it a safe place to share and dive into what we eat and what we do. I mean, it doesn't get much more personal than that. It takes some empathy.
Contrary to popular belief, people who are obese are not all lazy and unmotivated. And yet they're oftentimes regarded that way. And that's just not only not right, but it's not fair. So.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming to chat with me a little bit. And for all of you who are listening, especially if you're thinking about one day being a medical student and specializing what these guys specialize in, check them out at the MCG website. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoyed it, so I can't wait to continue to share my wellness journey, but also my experiences with Ozempic. So far, so good. But if you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Like, subscribe, do all the things, and talk to us. So if you are going through your own wellness journey, weight loss journey, feel free to share those experiences with us. DM us on our Instagram, all that good stuff. And until then, I'll see you in the next one.